Florida had barely recovered from Hurricane Helene when Hurricane Milton hit them. The rubble was still in some streets, but Floridians had to pack up and evacuate again. This year, it seems to be a potent hurricane season, but hurricanes have plagued the United States and other Atlantic nations for ages. Time to find out more about hurricanes and their history. So now, it's time for a long story short about the history of hurricanes. First of all, it's important to understand what hurricanes are. Hurricanes are powerful tropical storms that form over warm ocean waters. Their history is deeply intertwined with the coastal regions they affect, known as typhoons in the Pacific and cyclones in the Indian Ocean. Hurricanes are a specific type of tropical cyclone that occurs in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific Oceans. These storms can have devastating effects, including strong winds, heavy rains, storm surges and flooding. Hurricanes have shaped economies, communities and even entire nations. Hurricanes form over warm ocean waters, typically above 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm water fuels the storms by providing moisture that evaporates and rises, creating a low pressure system. As the air rises and cools, clouds form and spiral due to the Earth's rotation, better known as the Coriolis effect. The result is a rotating storm system with an eye at the center, where conditions are calm, surrounded by intense winds and thunderstorms in the eye wall. A hurricane's strength is classified using the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, which ranks hurricanes from Category 1, the weakest, to Category 5, the strongest, based on sustained wind speeds. A Category 1 hurricane has wind speeds of 74 to 95 miles per hour, which should cause minimal damage, while a Category 5 hurricane has wind speeds of 157 miles per hour or even higher, meaning catastrophic damage. It aren't just the wind speeds that cause damage. Hurricanes cause storm surges or rise in sea level due to the storm's low pressure and winds pushing the water ashore, which can be quite deadly. Now a little bit of history. Even though I couldn't find historical records of natives that have survived hurricanes, they have been an important part of their lore. When the first Spanish explorers came and arrived at the Greater Antilles, the indigenous Taino looked at their battered boats and exclaimed it was the work of Horican, the Carib god of evil. This god's name may have also come from the Mayan god of wind, Huracan. The Spanish took over the name, which remains the Spanish word for hurricane today. By the 16th century, the word was modified once again to our present-day hurricane. As the Europeans slowly colonized the Americas, they were not yet accustomed to this violent weather phenomenon. Hurricanes were a new threat to the colonizers as they did not encounter this in mainland Europe. For example, the Spanish that colonized the Lesser Antilles saw the indigenous Kalinago build their houses around the trunks of palm trees. Their roofs mainly consisted of leaves and branches, and the buildings were always quite low, with just a single story. The Spanish assumed their brick and wooden houses would be much stronger, but soon they saw their house came crumbling down, while the Kalinago dwellings remained standing. The colonizers came to realize the Kalinago low building style helped protect it from high winds, and if the home was blasted by a hurricane, the lightweight materials meant the building collapse didn't jeopardize people inside. The dwellings were also easy to rebuild if needed. Another example can be found in Jamaica, where the Taino people built low circular houses called bohíos, made from tree trunks and topped with thatched roof. The circular style was a huge advantage, where the European style houses were square and took the winds head on, the circular Taino homes deflect the winds easily. In the end, it wasn't just their housing that made the natives more capable of dealing with the hurricanes. They were also more transient. Indigenous people were able to survive a number of natural disasters because they quickly learned to move if a region was experiencing such a disaster. When we look at more recent history, we see that hurricanes have a bigger impact on society. People are settled in houses which are built for comfortable living instead of being storm-proof. Modern day houses are square to maximize room and have multiple floors for efficient living. Furthermore, population density has increased by many scales of multiplication, making hurricanes even more deadly today. One of the first documented hurricanes is the hurricane of 1780, in which an estimated 20,000 people have died, making it the most deadly Atlantic hurricane on record. When it first made landfall in Barbados, it was likely to be a Category 5 hurricane, with wind gusts estimated to be up to 200 miles per hour. In the following week, it swept through the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. Barbados, Martinique and St. Lucia were among the locations hardest hit. There were thousands of casualties on these islands, along with significant property damage. Another devastating hurricane was the Galveston hurricane of 1900. Galveston was the biggest port city in Texas and a popular destination for tourists. It had among the highest capita income rates in the US, making it the economic center of gravity. On September 4th, the residents and tourists got warned for an incoming storm. However, local authorities avoided terms like tornado or hurricane to prevent mass panic. A lot of people ignored the warnings and decided to stay, which turned out to be a grave mistake. On September 8th, the hurricane reached Galveston with wind speeds of 145 miles per hour. Homes and businesses were easily demolished by the water and the wind. Some 8,000 lives were lost according to official estimates, making it the most deadly hurricane in US history. As these disasters took their toll, it started a whole new field of research, the study of predicting and preventing hurricanes. One of the frontrunners in this field of research was Father Benito Vines, a Jesuit clerk based in Havana, Cuba. He decided in 1870 that the most important way of preventing lives lost during hurricanes was informing the population. Father Vines worked at an observatory in Cuba and learned to watch cloud patterns and ocean swells in order to predict hurricanes. Furthermore, he set up a network of observing entities to share information and bundle their knowledge. The US soon took a page out of Father Vines' book and started an organization that would predict hurricanes as well, nowadays known as the Weather Bureau. In the 20th century, advancements in meteorology significantly improved the ability to track and predict hurricanes. One of the first major improvements was the implementation of early radar systems. In the 1940s, radar technology began to detect storms, although its range and accuracy were limited. The use of hurricane reconnaissance flights starting during World War II also provided valuable data, allowing planes to fly into the storm's eye and report back on the conditions. In the 60s, it was satellite technology which was the big game changer. The TIROS-1 satellite in 1960 was the first to send images of weather systems from space, giving meteorologists a bird's-eye view of developing storms. In recent decades, computer models and advanced weather prediction systems have allowed scientists to better predict storm paths, intensities, and potential impacts. While forecasting has greatly improved, challenges remain in predicting a hurricane's rapid intensification or weakening. While warning systems have been the most effective tool to prevent deaths during hurricanes, there have been other projects as well to prevent hurricanes entirely. One of the earliest and certainly one of the most sensational attempts to divert or destroy a hurricane came from the work of pseudoscientist and sexual revolutionary Wilhelm Reich, an old student of Sigmund Freud. Reich had his own theory about orgone energy, which he explains as a natural force of life that floated in the atmosphere and was often experienced by humans during a certain high point of their evening. Reich tried to collect orgone energy in cabinets called orgone accumulators. He thought the orgone energy would be potent enough to disperse clouds and even reverse the path of a hurricane. Unfortunately, his cloudbuster never took off, as Reich was arrested for breaking FDA regulation and got sent to jail. Not soon after, he died in jail. Reich wasn't the only one trying to be known as the Hurricane Buster. Even the US government took a crack at it with Project Cirrus, a weather modification project utilizing cloud seeding, a method of weather modification that involves lacing a cloud layer with materials that are meant to change the power and content of a storm. In 1947, Project Cirrus tried on a hurricane. A big payload of dry ice was dropped in the storm, which in theory would slow down the storm's wind speed. Initially, the pilots said they did notice some change, but it was not actually clear if the changes they observed were caused by the ice. After the payload was dropped, the hurricane changed course and set for Savannah, Georgia, doing major damage. When the newspaper published about the experiment, local outrage ensued, resulting in a failed lawsuit against the state. After a quick name change to Project Storm Fury, the government tried 2 more times to stop a hurricane. Even though the wind speed seemed to drop after the seeding, it was too expensive to carry on. Storm Fury continued on in a lesser form until 1983, when it was finally shut down. Its cloud seeding turned out to be a bust. Even in recent history, there have been cases of people trying to stop hurricanes. There have been Facebook groups trying to stop a hurricane by pointing their fence at the hurricane. Others have tried shooting the hurricane. Unfortunately, none of these plans have worked. For now, the best way to save lives during hurricane season is to watch the news, find a safe place, and stock up on fresh water. For now, this has been Long Story Short about hurricanes. Stay safe, and I'd love to see you in the next episode of Long Story Short.